It's Wednesday, so you know what that means.
Hey, it's another episode of the Big Coe Show.
It's your man, Mastermind.
It's your boy, Big Coe. We here, man. We here on a Wednesday night talking about some stuff that's pretty serious, man. I hope everybody had a good week since the last time we saw y'all. There's been a lot of things going on. A lot of things we want to talk about. You know, the Breonna Taylor settlement. You know,
yeah. You know, we really need to get into that one.
I really don't, want to go down the rabbit hole right now, just based on because it's so new. Yeah. We will be doing a show on that because we want to, find out what you think about it. I have my own opinions. I'm sure
I definitely got some
Mastermind has his own opinions about how that turned out. But
so can we lock it in next Wednesday?
So next Wednesday we want to talk about it?
Let's talk about it.
All right.
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock? 7:30?
7:30? 7:30? Okay, so
we figured it out.
So
next week, for real though.
Next week we're gonna have a show. I would love to get some, some academics on, some attorneys to talk about the legalities of, what we know
and
about
what do we
the settlement.
Do now? What's next?
And what's next? So I think it's gonna be a power packed show. It's gonna be very entertaining. I'm sure. I got some people I know that are very interested in having a discussion about it. So that's what we'll do for next week. So next Wednesday. We'll figure out the time, I guess. We'll stay shoot for 7:30.
7:30.
We're gonna do a show. We're gonna talk about the settlement. What it means, what it don't mean, what it look like, what it don't look like, what we know, and more importantly, what we don't know.
No doubt. Say her name. What next?
Yeah. What next? That gonna be the name of the show.
Let's do it.
What next? I like it. Say her name. What next?
Yep.
Okay. So look, tonight. We have some outstanding co-stars on the show tonight. We want to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart. I know, we've had discussions about it. We've all had experiences where this has, touched us in one form or fashion. So mental health for men,
This is tough. It's a stigma behind it. Folks don't want to don't want to talk to nobody. They don't want to talk to a therapist. They rarely want to talk to their boys. Yeah. Most of the time, just sit and drink and keep it moving.
And what we know is, like, historically, particularly in our community, it's you don't talk about your problems. You just put your head down and work. So much so that I recently watched a Dave Chappelle skit where one of his jokes was, we don't have time to think about our feelings. You know what I mean? We don't have time to think about our feelings. So we brought some academics on, some people that know way more about it than we do. And we want to, bring them on and chat with them. And I also brought a couple of friends of mine on the show, some co-stars that are near and dear to my heart, just because we've had some conversations and really conversations that they've had publicly about some challenges that they've had with mental illness, depression, things of that nature. So definitely want to hear from those brothers as well.
It's only one rule though. You got to keep it
100. Like that's the rule. That's the rule. We keep it 100 on the Big Coe Show. So straight talk only in this room. So who do we have up first?
First of all, from, I don't know, let's just say the East Coast, we have Dr. Alonda Alloway.
From the East Coast. She from C-Town all day, right? Like, what are we doing right now?
Currently.
I was just saying, but like, when you say from, though, like, what I'm saying? That's like saying I'm not from.
Born and raised from C-Town.
Okay.
I like that.
She's a well-traveled woman, a woman of her roots is in the C-Town. So
okay. UGA represent.
Hey Doc.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey. Hello. Yes, I'm on the East Coast now, but I am from Columbus, Georgia. Went to school with these two gentlemen at UGA. Go Dogs. I'm currently in Northern Virginia. I'm in Northern Virginia, where I own and work as a therapist for a private therapy. Thank you. A private group practice. We call Loudon Counseling and Coaching, and we have we address mental health, physical health, and financial well-being. So we have therapists, we have CPAs, we have life coaches, we have like a gamut of things, kind of a holistic approach.
Now, what made you want to go? So, would you say you're a therapist or a psychologist? How are you referred?
Psychotherapist. So I'm actually a licensed clinical social worker.
So how did you get into this field?
That is a good question. You know, as a little girl, I wanted to I wanted to grow up and be a psychologist, right? But you know, you later learn that psychologist is may not be exactly what you want to be. I just know that a lot of my friends would come to me for help with their issues. And so I ended up kind of being that. So not a psychologist, but a licensed clinical social worker. So I have social work for like 20 something years, you know, counseling, all a part of that.
So for those that don't know me, so what would be the difference between like a psychotherapist or a psychologist? And I know that a psychiatrist can prescribe drugs. So I don't have a lot of psychiatrist friends. I'm trying to get some. No, that was a joke. But like what's the difference between those two?
So good point. Because a lot of people use psychiatrists with psychologists a lot. Psychiatrists prescribe. Psychologists do not. Psychologists, some of them do testing, some do only testing, some do therapy as well, some only do therapy. They just have a gamut of what they can do and what they specialize in. A therapist can be a psychologist, a licensed clinical social worker, or a licensed professional counselor. So there's a big umbrella that we fall under. It just depends on what you call yourself.
Gotcha.
All right.
Gotcha. Well, welcome to the show, Doc. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, yes.
Who else do we have?
We have another doctor, sir.
These PhDs around me, baby. All my friends got credentials, baby.
All this alphabet soup.
Got credentials, baby.
Soup. Now, next doctor is Dr. Sigrid Elston.
Hey, Sigrid.
Hello.
How you doing today, love?
I am well. How are you?
Welcome to the Big Coach Show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Okay. Well, thank you first off for having me on the show, and thank you, Dr. Alonda, for inviting me along as well to support this effort. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Georgia, which is near and dear to my heart, my home. Currently, I live in Fishers, Indiana, so a suburb of Indianapolis, Indiana. And I guess I've been in practice for probably about close to 20 years almost. So I am a triple dog from University of Georgia, and I completed my undergraduate with our fellow co-host and Dr. Alonda, and stayed on for my master's in counseling and PhD in counseling psychology. So after leaving, took a year to get licensed, and in the state of Georgia, opened up my own practice, Diverse Counseling and Psychological Associates, and was there until about 2012 when we moved to Indiana due to my husband's job. And I worked remotely in different capacities, providing more supervision and consultation, and then opened up private practice here in Fishers about 2 years ago. So 2 years ago in August. So my specialty is, thank you. My specialty is psychiatric obstetrics. So mainly a lot of women with antepartum, postpartum depression, anxiety, as well as multicultural and women's health, ethnicity concerns, as well as domestic violence. And so that's pretty much what led me into this path. I think I was interested when I was about 13. It was like, I want to help people who are underrepresented, and regardless of what that looks like. So that was my goal.
Right.
Super doctor. Okay, man, I see you.
I love it. And you know, just as a side note, I find it interesting that both of you women went into the fields that you've gone in, because I find myself on y'all's couches in college, like one way or another, like telling you about some issue or asking about something, like, and even after college, I've been, you know, we've exchanged, I've asked for advice from both of you about different situations. So yeah, I think that fits perfectly. Thank you so much for joining us today, my friends. Welcome to the show. Who else do we have on the show today, Master?
Well, Big Coe, we have two guests who want to sit in with us and have the doctors pick their brain. First, we have Mr. Erik Kelley.
Kelly, what's going on, brother?
How's it going, everybody?
Hey,
welcome
to the show. Doing great.
Looking like the Brady Bunch over here. And we have, ready to go, Damon Anders.
I am not the youngest one in curls, obviously.
Damon, are you there?
Uh-oh.
I thought I was.
Uh,
There you go. What's going on?
All right.
So quickly, real quick, Kelly, why don't you give us a quick bio, tell the people who you are. You know, he's also a Georgia alum, Go Dogs, my brother. You know what I'm saying? We are all dogs in the building.
Woo, woo.
Yeah, it's a Georgia graduate, class 2002. Currently, my situation, I'm currently unemployed due to COVID-19. So I've been that way since April. As far as kind of why I guess why I'm on the panel today, why I'm on the show, I've probably been suffering from depression most of my life. I guess you don't really track back and know when it started or how long it's been going on. As far back as I can remember, maybe some aspects of my life have been a little bit different due to depression. I've been dealing with it probably for about 10, 12 years now was when I first saw a therapist. I do currently take medication for my depression. As of late, I've just been more open about it, even on social media. I just think it's a message people probably can relate to right now. And it's something I deal with on a clinical level. And I think more people, based on kind of everything that we've all been dealing with for the past 6-7 months now, I think more people can relate to probably some of the things I go through, at least maybe if not on the level I feel it, at least on, some level, because I'm sure we've all felt some level of depression and anxiety and a little bit of despair over the past 7 months. So recently I've been expressing those views on Facebook, and I've honestly gotten really great feedback from people. I think they've been appreciating someone actually showing some vulnerability and a little bit of honesty, as opposed to putting a filter on my life and pretending everything's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to get to that. It's, because that's part of the reason why I invited you on the show, because I can definitely appreciate the transparency that you've had in dealing with some of the challenges that you had. So yeah, we're going to get into that, man. I appreciate you for sharing. Let's go to Damon. Damon, my brother, what's going on?
Not too much. How y'all doing? It's a pleasure to be on your show. Fellow Bulldogs, I love y'all. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. And look, Damon, you've been on the show before you was on the show, because for those of y'all who don't know, the theme song at the beginning of the show is Tony Atlanta and my homeboy Agape, also known as Damon. And that's the theme song. So he's been on the show since day one. You know what I mean? So tell us a little bit about yourself, brother, what you got going on,
Well, UGA grad in 2000, struggled with, didn't know what it was until I was diagnosed at 24, but was struggling with it since I was about 7 years old. And nobody recognized it because, like you said, we hide it. And we want to act as though nothing's wrong. So I was diagnosed at 24 with bipolar disorder, and it was crippling because of the stigma back then. That has lessened over the years as more information has come out about it and people have been more open and transparent. But I, like E, which I appreciate, is very transparent on social media about it, which helps others not feel so alone and isolated. And they themselves can feel free to talk openly and honestly about it, because it's serious. People lose their lives every second of each day because they feel isolated and nobody can relate to them. So that's tremendous. And I applaud you, E, because that truly makes a difference, making people feel that they're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I wanted to pose a question, to everyone, to the panel, but I'll start with the ladies, of course. When we look at it from I want to say societal level, because, we deal with this a lot in the Black community, with both our men and our women, not going to see professionals when they feel like they need to as a sign of weakness. So I just want to kind of start to the roots of where do we think from as a society that comes from? What is the primary, I guess, hurdle that's keeping men specifically, because of the show, from disclosing or even identifying that they have challenges? And I'll start with Dr. Alloway.
Why you gotta put me on the spot? I think it's because, we have been, young men are taught from the beginning, like, you don't cry, you don't show emotion, and things like that. And that starts from the root of it, right? Because they think, okay, you can't cry, you can't show emotion, so you have to hold whatever is going on within you to yourself. And you think if you do express any type of emotion, you're kind of ingrained in you without people even do that, right? So you grow up still thinking, okay, I can show these emotions, I can't cry, I can't do these things. And then when you do have those mental health moments where something is going wrong, you're scared to tell it somebody.
Yeah. Sigrid, what do you think?
Yes, I definitely agree with Dr. Alonda. I think historically there has been that stigma of the sign of weakness if you admit that you are challenged with mental health challenges. And the thing about it is that the need may be there, however, it's not comfortable to talk about, and then to whom? Because if we're talking about different cultural aspects, particularly, in the African American community, you add on that layer of you need to pray about it. If your faith was strong enough, then you should be able to go to the Lord in prayer and manage it. And I'm not at all knocking that, but I do believe that whoever your higher power is has put into your life and into the world individuals with certain resources who can help you. And so just as if you have diabetes or some other health condition, you would go to a doctor in that case. And so I think when you add the cultural piece, that's one thing too that makes it even harder. But I believe there were a couple studies in between 2016 and 2018, and about 60% or so of the individuals who were interviewed for the study agreed that mental health and admitting that you have a mental health challenge is a sign of weakness. So that's now. So it's not just for decades, for years, that's been the stigma that's there, but how much it carries on after all this time. And so I was reflecting in preparation for today. I was thinking in my years of practice in individual private practice, and Dr. Alonda, you can amen this or tell if there's a different situation for you, but I think I've only had about 6 males, and I've seen a few hundreds of clients in private practice, and only about 6 males who have come in, and it's primarily been around work or relationship, but very difficult for them to admit that there was something else like depression or anxiety. And so we see now it's still a huge part of the problem.
One of I read a statistic today that says,
I'm having the
I'm sorry.
right now.
What's that?
I was replying to Sigrid. I'm getting the opposite of that right now, which I'm loving. Now, more than half of my clients are Black males of color, which is unusual.
Right.
Initially, I had all females, and there was one point where it was sometime last year. I will never forget. There was like a 2-day period where there were 5 who called in for appointments. And so it freaked me out. And I was like, did they have like a meeting? Was there, a frat meeting, a man club, something? Was my name on a wall somewhere? Like, because the first one I was happy, the second one happy, and then the third one I'm like, okay, wait a minute, something's going on. Right. But these men didn't know each other. And so I'm not sure what precipitated that call in, but since the pandemic, I have had even more males come in, and the issues that they're dealing with are a gamut of things. A lot of things deal with relationships, surprisingly, because they don't want to talk to their boys about it. or their family, or, you know, even their partners. So to see so many men now finally being comfortable with coming to a professional is like awesome. So when I don't have space and I'm full in my calendar, I still make sure that I keep in touch with those guys. I'm like, hey, I don't have a space right now, but I'll let you know as soon as possible, because I don't want them to get discouraged. So so I still reach out and email them every, you know, so often. Are you still looking? Have you found anybody? Okay, I might have a space opening up, you know. And I just don't want them to finally get to the point where they're like, okay, I can go to somebody, and then they call me and I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't see you, you know. So still try to keep them in the loop there.
And that's a great point, because I would agree with you that that has been a shift probably since the start of the year, in between the social civil unrest and the violence and the fears that a lot of men and males have, and challenges regardless of race, just challenges in dealing with, like, who am I in this world and how do I play into that systemic, you know, the systemic aggressions and microaggressions. So I think I've seen that too. So to your point, I would say during this year, I haven't been able to take any of them, but I have gotten a lot of calls in between the pandemic and the race relations that have kind of taken to a different level. And so, of course, there is this piece that it sometimes is more comfortable to self-medicate, and that might be through alcohol or drugs, because it's easier and more normed, you know, and so it's more okay to see other people do that. So going to therapy is a huge step. So I do agree with you. It's like, wait a minute, what is going on? But you welcome it and you're glad. And I make sure, like with you, like giving them referrals, making sure they've got connections to somebody, because you can miss that window. And when you look at the numbers of people who have mental illness or mental health challenges and on different levels, and then those who actually get services, that decreases by half.
Right. And then I want to go to Erik real quick, just to kind of touch on both of the doctor's points. I've seen, and you know, just in social media, a bit of a change in the regard with that too. I've seen more men sharing, you know, things that were going on. So I'll go to Erik, because, you know, this is something we've talked about before. What do you think was the shift to where you decided that, you know, this was something that you want to share with people and let them know that was going on? Was it related to the pandemic, or was it something else?
Yeah, kind of. For a minute, when I was kind of having one of my, I guess, you know, one of my down days, before my birthday was last month. I thought about asking everyone for my birthday just to reach out to someone they have not talked to in a while. Whether that just be a text message, a phone call, maybe a message on Facebook, just something. Reach out to somebody you haven't talked to in a while and just say, hey, how are you doing? Because we have become disconnected in so many different ways because of the pandemic. And I have people that do that for me. I have people that check on me constantly, not because I need it, just because I have really great friends and they love me. But I just wondered in that moment, you know, does everybody have that? Even if they're not, you know, diagnosed as being depressed, maybe they're just having a really rough week or a really bad day. And you'd be amazed at what someone just giving you a call or shooting you a text or just letting you know that they're thinking about you can do to, it may not lift you back up off the ground, but it may be the start of what gets you back up off the ground that day. So because of that, I was like, well, you know, my friends know that I suffer from depression, but I decided to be a little bit more open and start talking about it on social media because, again, I think we see life through everyone's filters, and everybody uses filters to make their lives look the best that they possibly can. And we don't ever see anyone talking about the struggles they're going through, or maybe some, you know, maybe depression or whatever it is. And we just think everybody's lives are nice and beautiful during these times because nobody wants to say how they're really feeling. So I was like, well, maybe if I put that out there, one, people might appreciate my honesty, and two, maybe they'll know that they're not alone if they're dealing with something, and that there are other people out there that are struggling with something and are feeling that way.
Absolutely. Damon, you nodding. Will you have something to add to that?
I just agree, and piggybacking off of him, like it's vital, it's critical. because just human nature, we present a representation of ourselves, which isn't the honest self most times.
True.
And so our true selves, all of us are broken in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And so when we are open and honest about our brokenness, that's where the healing begins, and it helps others heal. I know in college, I was very, very private. I didn't let you all see me unless you saw Showtime. The hypomanic me, which I didn't know was hypomania then, if I wasn't that, I was secluded and severely depressed. So over the years, the past few years, just realizing, letting go of that fear, being open and honest, and that actually helps you heal. You feel better because the stigma is erased. When you're open and honest and you're not hiding anything, then the stigma is gone. You're not embarrassed. What can someone attack you with if you're already open about what they're attempting to attack you with?
Right.
This is true.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. I read a statistic today that said of 151 million men, 6 million are suffering from depression on a daily basis. Men account for 10% of eating disorders, which I never thought of.
Ooh,
and
wow.
It dawned on me because I too, fellas, I've gone through a bout of depression, and I went and saw a therapist, and that's kind of where it turned my whole view towards mental health, because it is a stigma, specifically and particularly in the Black community, and even in the male circle, the ego is so fragile, right? Yeah. The male ego, men hate it when I say this. The male ego is so fragile. It takes a lot to admit that vulnerability to another man. So I present this question to the academics.
Hold on, before you do that, let me present the question to you.
Okay.
So what was your outlook on therapy beforehand, before you went, and what drove you? Was just like, you know what, despite what I think, I'm going to go see somebody?
So for me, my outlook on therapy was the same as everybody else. Like, I don't need that. I'm not crazy. You know what I mean? Because that's what you tell yourself. Like, in order to go see someone to talk to about your issues, you have to be crazy or something has to be wrong with you. And for me, I suffered depression right after my divorce. And I went from being, a father in a house with kids and noise and breakfast and bus stop to dead silence. And it got to a point where, even though I had a very successful career in sales, I had a great job, I would be sitting on my toilet, like not using the bathroom, but on my toilet, fully dressed, looking at my watch like, I know I need to leave at some point. And it took a friend of mine, actually a colleague who became a friend. I started being habitually late, and that's not something my friends won't believe this, but that's not what I do at work. Yeah, I'll be late to the party. I'm late to the function, but I'm generally on time to work. So my boss came to me and he was like, "Man, what's going on?" He's like, "You've been late like 5 days, like 4 days this week. You were late 3 days last week. What's going on?" Like, that's not you. I'm used to you. And he flipped it. He was like, "I'm used to you being here to get everybody going. So I know something's going on, And I had to look in the mirror and be like, and when I finally looked in the mirror, it was a come to Jesus moment. I just broke down crying like something is wrong. So that's what made me go and see a therapist. And part of it was too, I was introduced to therapy in my marriage. So my ex-wife and we had seen a therapist. So that kind of warmed me up to it. So that made it a lot easier. So no, go ahead.
I was like, before you turn it back to the good doctors, I was just saying, I'll tell you how hard it can be to admit it, and I'll tell you what made me finally go seek therapy. And you said be 100% on the show, so I'll tell you this. I'll tell you why.
That's the only rule, bro.
Yeah. I had a friend that I work with who also suffered from depression, but like very, very, very bad depression. I mean, debilitating depression. Like it was known that his managers that, if he might be gone for a couple of days here and there, they were really good about it, and he had that freedom to take that time if he needed.
We have the same friend. Is our mutual?
No. This is before I met you, Corey. But
no.
Ultimately, he took a leave of absence because things had gotten so bad. And he went to get electroconvulsive therapy. And the doctors can explain a little bit about what that is. But essentially, it's putting electricity through your brain to try to reset some things and try to correct some neurons that aren't firing correctly. He came back from that. Not only did he not feel any better, it actually made him his memory was hazy. He couldn't remember even some good things and some happy times that he had. So one Friday night, he and I went out after work. Seemed like just a normal time. Grabbed some drinks, went and saw like some live music somewhere. And I wasn't in the best mood at that time either. So we got talking deep, and I don't remember all of the conversation, but I'm sure that we probably expressed both some negative feelings that we were having. And then he dropped me off, and come to find out when I got to work Monday morning, after he dropped me off, he went and jumped in front of a train.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So I was the last person that he interacted with before he did that. At that time, I knew I was probably suffering from some level of depression. That wasn't really ready to admit it, or maybe admit it to myself, because that's the first thing you have to do before you're going to take any action on it. But that was the catalyst that said, and I knew I was not suffering from depression to the level that he was, but I was like, you know what? And he was seeing help. He was getting help. He was on medication. And I was like, I'm not doing anything for myself right now. And he still ended up in a situation where he felt he needed to do that. So I was like, I don't want to get to that point. I'm not doing everything I can for myself currently, and I don't want to get to that point. So I am going to admit it to myself. I need to talk to somebody. And I started seeing somebody. Now, how I help other people or try to help other people get over that stigma. And you mentioned it, Sigrid, you mentioned it kind of earlier. It's like nobody says anything if you say that you suffer from diabetes, or if you have high blood pressure, or if you have a hormone imbalance, or you have any type of vitamin deficiency. Nobody says anything about any of those, and you go to the doctor to get those fixed. All depression is, all bipolar disorder is there is chemicals in your brain that are not being regulated and are not going out in the amounts that they should, which is causing you to feel that way. So if you don't feel bad about going to the doctor because you have diabetes, then you shouldn't feel bad about going to the doctor because you're depressed or because you have bipolar disorder, because all it is a chemical imbalance in your body, the same as any other chemical imbalance. This one's just in your head.
It's the Big Coe Show. I am Mastermind. This Big Coe. Before we go to the doctors, Damon, real quick, tell us how you felt and what made you decide to see somebody.
Okay, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, but got to be 100.
All right.
On medication and in therapy, I had 4 suicide attempts.
Go. Whoa.
And so I'm a believer in Christ. So I had a long talk with the Lord, and I was like, this may not be for everybody, but this has been my path.
Yeah.
This medication and therapy is not working. And I have a mistrust with, generally speaking, not to anyone specifically, the medical profession. Right. Reason being, on medication and in therapy, I was extremely sick. And this was continuous, committed, dedicated therapy and medicated routine. So, not fully trusting, wanting my well-being, but my dollars. And I did a test with my therapist for 6 months. So I was off of the medication without letting her know for 6 months. And I asked her at the end of that 6 months, how have I been doing? She said, oh, Damon, you're doing the best you've ever done. And I was like, oh, really? Let me let you in on a little something, man.
Right.
I've been off of my medication. She was irate and would no longer see me unless I got back on the medication. And I was like, ma'am, I thank you for your services, but I am better than I've ever felt because I'm not numb. I'm not a zombie. I don't have months of crippling depression, and I haven't had a manic episode, which on the bottle it specifically says may cause a depressive or manic episode, which it did. And I haven't had such in 2 years since I've been off of it. Everything is here on this planet to naturally heal the body with no side effects. If we take responsibility for our health and not put it in the hands, not anyone specifically, put it in the hands of doctors. Now, some people do need medication. I'm not knocking that. I'm talking about my journey. And so if you put the proper things in your body will react appropriately. That's my spiel.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So either of our academic beauties on the panel,
ladies, doctors, it's so much information you've gotten so far. Go with it. Let's go. Double Dutch. Next
time. Dr. Alonda, would you like to go first?
They being nice.
That's so nice.
I mean.
Okay. Well, I can go.
Okay. Sorry. I'm trying to get my mute button together. Thank both of you gentlemen, actually all three of you gentlemen. Medication doesn't work for everybody. I am not a proponent for psychotropic medications unless it is for serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar. I have clients who do come to me like, do you know a psychiatrist? I want medication for depression or anxiety or whatever, right? And that is complete last resort for me. Like Damon said, there are so many different things you can put in your body to make your body run more efficiently than it has been running. Your body, your brain, your mind, all those things, right? So there are things you can do holistically to improve your moods. Like most people of color typically tend to have a deficiency. Vitamin D a lack of vitamin D affects your moods. So a simple thing as taking a vitamin D supplement or getting out into the sun more or whatever can increase your mood. So medication isn't always the answer. Oh, okay. Something else I tell people to check with who are experiencing depressive symptoms and they can't explain why. It's not situational. It's not, they can't attribute it to anything. This is the first time it ever happened or whatever. I always try to tell people I ask them when was their last physical and if their blood work was run, if there was anything, or if physical. Some things that they can check for are thyroid. If your thyroid is acting up, that can mimic depression. So that's something to check for. Thyroid and vitamin D are two main things to check for before trying to go on any type of psychotropic medication.
I'm actually hypothyroidic myself. So
I'll jump rope. Double Dutch.
All right.
Okay. Well, I'll jump in. Yes, I will jump in. I do want to commend all three of you and anyone else who is tuned in and taking that step, because I think I'll tie in some about your original question as far as some of the stigma. Historically, we may think, we see TV shows, or if it's commercials, TV shows, comedies, or more serious dramas, and there is this understanding that the therapist, psychotherapist, psychologist, psychiatrist all get kind of lumped in the same category, it seems somewhat on TV. There is this stigma that you're going to come in and someone's going to tell you about yourself. They're going to analyze you. And so I think when you come into it with this thought that a complete stranger is going to take my little bit of history that I give them, tell me who I am, and then just immediately give me this treatment, particularly it may be psychotropic medication, that does also trigger a certain level of hesitation about pursuing therapy. And so when I meet with my clients, I always want to make sure that they know that this is more a consultation. You might see the letters, or if it's degrees or diplomas, or have a certain level of angst about coming in, but it's a team. You've been in you for 20, 30, 40, 50 years or more. And I come with my certain level of experience and training. And so we are coming together as a team so that I'm not telling you about yourself, but you disclosing and me helping you disclose your history and what your symptoms are with what has historically worked through research and my own experiences with my clients. We come together, and if it doesn't work, to your point, Damon, if it doesn't work, then we need to do something differently. And quickly. And when we look at some of the different medications, if it's, for example, some like Lexapro, some old ones like Paxil, they can cause anxiety symptoms. And what can happen is that can feel more painful. Lithium, certain medications can make you feel too low or make you feel too jittery. And it's so painful that too can make you feel worse and not want to take the medication or not trust the feel at all. So I do agree with you, Dr. Alonda, too, that yes, the medication can work for different individuals, but I do think that there's a difference between more of a chemical imbalance that's more of a clinical depression and a reactive. And so some of what we've seen in this influx of male clients in particular who are at least interested in therapy and pursuing at this time, a lot of it could be triggered more so because of anxiety. If they're not able to provide for their families, if they're losing their jobs, these stressors might trigger more of the anxiety, and it can kind of mask the depression. So it's kind of hard to tell which is which because the symptoms can overlap. And so I hope that before we wrap up, we might be able to talk a little bit more about the symptoms and what's kind of traditionally heard of and what it may look like differently in children, young males, in adult males. And that too might increase in awareness, because what you may think depression looks like can feel and look very, very different from person to person. Okay.
You ain't
And
said
so you
nothing
may
but a
find
word.
more.
I'm definitely gonna ask you about that.
Absolutely.
Yes, because it can look more like, anger and
Absolutely.
irritability and frustration, and you
So,
might see some changes in appetite. You might not see that kind of crippling, not wanting to, go to work or get out of bed, or this crying or weeping. Maybe it has such a hold on you that you can't even emote. You can't release it. And so it comes out in more physiological ways. So you'll feel your body feel more tense or anxious or restless and trouble going to sleep. So I think that's another piece that we miss because we might misdiagnose, to your point, Damon. And
Excellent.
we can easily misdiagnose because we're assuming that it's this because it looks and it fits these criteria. And so that's a part that I just
Beautiful.
challenge all mental health professionals to think more more collaboratively with our clients and our patients instead of assuming that we are, the expert.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah. And I just want to this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's near and dear to the show.
right.
Definitely gonna be
That client is the expert of themselves. We're not the expert of you. You know you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dr. Lottie. Keep going. I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead. Well, to piggyback off what Sigrid was saying about how it looks differently, like depression, for one, right? So most people think depression looks sad. Not necessarily. Sometimes it is anger. And so when we see a male who is angry all the time, and we're thinking, he's just a angry man. Depression, look like sadness. So there are a lot of different symptoms that can mimic something else or look a certain, but it's something else.
All right. Now we have a question from one of our viewers. I want the doctors to go first, and fellas, if you have some advice, y'all do that as well. All right. Now the question is, this is from Jennifer Ware McCrary. She says,
Hello.
"How do you encourage men to seek help?"
Great question.
Go ahead. Hello, Jennifer. Wonderful question. I think, one of the main things you all have addressed is how difficult
I'm
it
sorry.
is.
I didn't want to jump in for
I'm
you,
sorry.
Sigrid.
How difficult it is
you can't make
to encourage individuals to go. And so I think one of the things that we'll often find is if it's kind of hard to go in to take care of your physical health, we know that it's even more difficult when it comes to mental health because of the stigmas. And particularly, no offense, but just historically, it takes more for men to go. It has to be pretty bad because you all are trained from birth to be strong, and strong, how we define it, is holding everything in, holding it together, and having a tight upper lip, not showing strength in, I have a problem, let me do something about this.
That my leg has to be falling off for me to go to the doctor. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, like that's how I see. So one of the main things I think, encouraging them to go to the doctor. A lot of points of entry is going to your MD, and they will kind of do a mental health assessment more consistently, not all the time, but more consistently. Your general practitioner, that's one way. Groups, different websites like NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, National Institute for Mental Health, they will have different groups that might specify for different categories as far as ages or generations, or have groups in different regions of the country. So I think just being supportive, not laughing and blowing it off, but listening and paying attention to anything that doesn't seem like it's quote unquote normal. And that could be anything, not just a mood.
Dr. Alonda?
I think Sigrid summed it up very well. However, you can't make anybody do anything that they do not. Just like when parents bring their kids want it, it's a team effort, like Sigrid was saying earlier, right? So that person has to want to participate in the therapy as well. Something that you can possibly do is ask your partner, or if it is your partner or whoever you're trying to get into counseling, to go to counseling with them. So I want to do a family session, or, a partnership session or whatever, so that you participate in it with them as well, and they feel a little more comfortable. So that's one way to kind of encourage someone.
Can I jump in?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Okay, as a man, what helped me initially get help, as men coming from a woman, we are guarded at times because we want to come across as Superman, and we do not need help. And so for a woman to encourage us, it has to, like you wonderful doctor said, very supportive, very patient, very gentle. Understanding the male ego, like Big Coe said, is extremely fragile.
Extremely.
Yes. And so we want to be your Superman. So having that in mind, being very delicate. But like you doctor said, most importantly, us as men, we have to acknowledge that there's a problem. So that would be the second step, the gentleness, the patience, and the encouragement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Erik, you got anything to add to that?
No, I was, I think Damon is right. It's just, because, when somebody says, how do you encourage someone to go, that's a very slippery slope, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your intentions could be, you're very well intended, but that person, especially if they're going through a depressive state or whatever, it's going to come off in a completely different way.
Totally.
So you have to be very delicate in that situation. I would say not necessarily encourage them to see someone in the beginning. Maybe just encourage them to look at themselves and say, is this who you're supposed to be? Is this who you think you're supposed to be? Like, does this feel normal to you? Like, I've just noticed changes. Like, does this seem like how you're supposed to be feeling? Because I feel like you could be feeling better. And then kind of approaching it that way, not saying, hey, I think you need to go talk to a therapist, but asking them to look within themselves and say, is this the way I should be feeling? Is this normal for me?
Beautiful.
And the one thing I would say is the worst thing a person can ever say, someone who suffers from depression or bipolar or whatever, is you just need to snap out of it. Like, you cannot say a worse thing to a person who's depressed than just snap out of it and get in a better mood.
Thank you, Erik.
Yeah,
that's how you keep the doctors in business.
Yeah, great point. So
and thank you, Jennifer, for the question.
Yeah, thanks, J. Lolo. Look, so this, like I said, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. It's definitely going to be something that we're going to continuously talk about. We have to find a solution because, like, our suicide rates are going up, our depression rates are going up, and it affects the whole family unit. And if anybody knows anything about the Big Coe show, we all about the family. So whatever we can do to fix the family is one thing that, that's what we're going to try. So I definitely, appreciate everyone for coming on. But before we go, Sigrid kind of touched on this. Like, I wanted to present this to both the doctors as well as my brothers. Like, so what is something for the doctors? What are some signs, that you could look for in a person that may be potentially depressed or maybe potentially bipolar? And then for the fellas, like, what was it something that when you looked in the mirror and said, okay, this is something I need to address? So we go ladies first.
Okay, well, I think we've touched on a few of the symptoms, but I do want to highlight bipolar in particular, only because I think there's this, there's not much clarity and people make some assumptions and confuse it with maybe like borderline personality disorder, and not realizing that it is what was formerly called and sometimes still referenced to manic depressive. And so manic depressive is two poles, bipolar. Yep. So you have the highs and the lows. And so when we look into those symptoms, the highs for some people could look like kind of risky behavior, risky sexual behavior, or substance abuse behavior, reckless type behavior. Or for somebody else, they could be very, very talkative. They could be extremely moody and hot and cold, or just nonstop, moving. So for one individual, it could look like, they're not making safe decisions. They're kind of acting kind of recklessly. Another one might not be spending, ridiculously or doing those things, but they are just constantly on the go. And along with that, limited need for sleep. Not just, I'm not sleeping much, but it's 2 hours, 4 hours, or days, depending on if it's, a hypomania or true manic episode. And then the depressive can look the sad, the down, really wanting to move, and it can hit pretty low. And when you start introducing medication to it, it is so important to find the right one if it's needed, because if it brings you down too low, it's going to feel and mimic depression. That is not a comfortable feeling, so I'm not going to take my medicine, right? And so then I'm going to be more likely to behave in ways that probably aren't as beneficial for my employment or my family, etc. And so I just wanted to touch on that part with the bipolar. And Dr. Alonda, it's up to you if you want to chime in some more on that, or just the kind of straight depression or dysthymia.
Very good, thank you. My connection is kind of super off, so I heard most of what you said, and I agree with everything that I heard.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So either one of the fellas, you want to maybe identify some things that you saw in yourself when you came to the realization that something needed to be addressed.
I kind of have interesting. So my dad was probably undiagnosed bipolar. My brother is diagnosed bipolar, and I probably would fall on the bipolar spectrum, but my highs aren't nearly as prominent as my lows. My highs just kind of manifest, and I'm just in a really great mood for no reason at all. Yesterday I was normal, or 2 days ago I was depressed. Today I feel great. I feel like
everybody in the break room all day long.
Yeah. Maybe, and she's right. Maybe I spend money I shouldn't be spending on stuff I don't need to be spending money on, just because I feel great. And I think that, tomorrow's going to bring my money back somehow, some way. I'll get it figured out. That's my manic. Like, I don't, my brother, he goes through really big highs and lows, and he had a problem with medication. He was on the wrong medication. And I'll tell you this, it is a journey when you're changing medications, because he was going through hell for about 6 months. All kinds of thoughts. My father, we realized, me and my brother talked about it. He would quit jobs on a whim. in his manic phases. So he would just quit jobs and think, I'm going to just find a better job and I'm going to do this. So what I've seen from like the manic part is it can be anything from just feeling really great for no reason to doing things you shouldn't be doing, like spending money you don't have, to the extreme where you might up and quit your job just because you think you deserve something better and you're going to find something better tomorrow. My depression manifests more in just a weakness. My body, my brain, everything is just tired. I mean, it's debilitating sometimes. I feel like I can't even get up off the couch to go get myself a drink of water. It's not necessarily always sad. Sometimes it's just like I feel like my body's been drained of all the energy that I could possibly have that day, and I don't know how I'm going to get it back. Now, a lot of times that is coupled with thoughts of just everything that's going wrong in my life at the moment. So it's kind of you're getting hit threefold, right? You're emotionally drained, you're physically drained, and you're just thinking about your problems all at once. So that's what it's like for me. As far as recognizing somebody else, yeah, if they lose a lot of weight, changes in their diet, changes in their motivation level. Like if they used to be someone who was motivated to do things, and now it seems like you call them or you try to get them to do things, and they start flaking on you more and more and start being active, just less and less, that can be a sign. Because I think a lot of times it manifests as just you don't have motivation to do a lot of things, whether that just be talking to a friend or going somewhere, going out to eat like you normally would. That motivation just starts to disappear and go away. So I think that can be an early indicator. Is just changes in behavior, and your motivation level can probably be an early sign that something may be going wrong with this person.
Great stuff. Damon, you still there? Did we lose Damon?
We kind of haven't, but come on, Damon.
While we wait, in the meantime, I want to mention
Sure.
that Erik made a huge point that I don't know that we've addressed yet really, is the biological genetic predisposition to certain disorders or diagnoses or symptomatology. And so that whole piece about, your father and then with your brother, some studies are showing even that undiagnosed attention deficit. Of course, that wasn't really thrown out as much maybe in the 70s when some of you all were born. But I was born a little bit later than that, and, with the 80s crew. And so at that time, people weren't talking about attention deficit as much in the 70s, early 80s. And so undiagnosed and untreated, that's not just meaning by medication, can likely develop into a bipolar presentation, not saying that it's the disorder. And so that's why it's so important to share history, mental health history, and to move on things quickly, not necessarily meaning with medication, but giving it attention and always getting a good background of family history.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. Damon, are you there, bro?
It is. Family history is very important.
I don't know, maybe David went to the bathroom.
All right.
So look, I think Dr. Alloway said something. Were you saying something, Dr. Alloway?
Wait, Damon, looks like David's trying to come back. Maybe.
He's
He's coming back.
Yeah, so.
No, I was saying, off of Sigrid about history, genetic history being very important, So hopefully when people go to see their therapist, that the therapist is asking what their family history is. In my practice, we do. There's a whole section in our intake packets about different types of mental illnesses and substance use and, even thyroid, if those things run in the family, because you can be predisposed to certain mental illnesses. So knowing that history is very important. When I have clients who come in who have absolutely nothing on the family history, I always question them saying, okay, nobody in the family has anything. Are you sure? And then they go into, oh, well, actually my grandma, she, I think she had this, or the family says this. And so then you find out all these undiagnosed symptoms that went on, that there was no treatment. And then, you find that there were many people in the family who may have had the same exact symptoms that they're exhibiting right now, finally getting help for it. being the first in their family to do so. So very important.
If you think there's a stigma now, that even for men or women back then, when our parents, and our grandmother, oh yeah, you would be ridiculed if you told someone that you were suffering from depression or something. They would look at you like you were out. It's like, just get your stuff together. That's all you need to do is get your stuff together.
Get yourself together.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Eric, that point that you just made growing up.
Pray it away.
I'm sorry. Well,
pray it away.
Pray it away. And
I think that's why it's so important, that we have these conversations, because we have to change that stigma. We have to have these conversations. And again, like, I don't want this to be the last time we talk about this, because there's a lot more to be speaking on, because we haven't even touched on, the social media aspect and how that affects mental health. We hadn't talked about everything that we're seeing in the news and how, seeing everything that's going on, whether it be political, whether it be socioeconomical, like how that affects, the mental health, because I've seen a rise, in depression numbers as well as suicide since COVID-19. And I read a statistic today that says statistically during election years, you have increased like cases. And we ain't even talked about the undocumented cases. So I think it's definitely a worthwhile conversation. I would love to have any or all of y'all back on the show. You're welcome to join us whenever we talk about this or any other subject. Again, thank you for being on the show this evening. I hope that everybody stays safe. I definitely keep all households in my prayers, like specifically. So stay safe. Party shots. Party shots.
Yeah. Okay. So, doctors, Erik, first, doctors, just say something that you want everyone to go home. Just one single thing you want everyone to go home with, and give a shout out to your practice. And we start with Dr. Alonda.
Why you keep starting with me? Like, can I think for a minute?
You're at the front of the
I just want everybody. I know, man. I always called on first. I just want people to recognize that everyone is human, and keep that foremost in your mind. Mental illness was a big stigma. It is not so much anymore. So if you're going through anything, it is okay to speak to someone other than your homie, your best friend, your pastor. It is okay to seek a professional. And then shout out to the practice, Loudon Counseling and Coaching in Sterling, Virginia, Northern Virginia.
All right.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Thanks for coming on, Doc. Thanks for coming on. Dr. Sigrid.
I can't say anything really different, but just wanted to revisit from the beginning. Arvell, you mentioned like all of us directly or indirectly have been affected, like I said, ourselves or in our families or close friends in some way by some type of mental health condition. And so it's very real. And historically, we were told, they're going to send you to Milledgeville. Remember, all of y'all are from Georgia, so you heard that. Central Hospital I think it closed down. It doesn't exist anymore. However, I've been hearing that since before I could walk well. And so it is historically what is said, that they're going to send you away. They're going to lock you up. And there are so many different diagnoses, disorders, symptoms in the continuum. And also to think that just if you do get help, and it's therapy or medication, it doesn't mean you have to be on it forever. And so, but it is a starting point, and the goal is for your therapist and staff to help you become your own therapist. And so utilize resources like NAMI, NAMI.org, or National Institute for Mental Health. Those are wonderful sites to direct you. And go dogs, and I love my family.
Go dogs. Go dogs. Erik, what you got?
Yeah, all I'll say, man, is I'm a man, and admitting that I suffer from depression doesn't make me less of a man. And I'm not saying, like I said, I've been vocal about it on social media, and I'm not saying that everybody should do that once they figure out what they're going through. But I'll let anybody listening who's ashamed, I'll tell you this: when I posted that post you probably saw the other night, Corey, about telling people I suffer from depression, I had a friend that I grew up with who I hadn't talked to in years. He called me up through Facebook and thanked me for expressing that, and expressing something that he was dealing with as well. I had another friend text me that same day, and I had any number of people comment on that post thanking me for expressing what I was going with, because they're going through some similar things. So I not only did not get any, I guess, negative commentary about me coming out and saying I was depressed. It was all positive, and people appreciated. Even other men appreciated me coming out and saying that, because it maybe made them feel like they could admit some things maybe they hadn't admitted before or weren't ready to admit. So, I would just say if you're going through something, or you think you're going through something, it's okay to talk about. Just make sure it's the right time for you. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, that's great party shots. I appreciate all the guests of the co-stars of the Big Coe Show.
Yep.
It's your boy Big Coe.
It's your man Mastermind.
So join us next week. We'll have a great show. We're gonna be talking about the settlement.
And Breonna Taylor.
All right, again, thanks to all my guests for signing off. We love y'all. See y'all on the next show.
Email us. Thank you. Appreciate each and every one of y'all. Great show.
Very well.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Bye-bye.
Good to see y'all too. Go Dogs.
All right. You know it. Miss y'all. All right. Bye, y'all. Miss you.
Go Dogs.
Yeah. I'm still live. Wait, you got to let me know.
I got you.
I'm still live. Oh, still live now?
Hey, we should be in.
Oh, we still live?
We still live.